A very warm welcome, children. We are continuing with the lesson Morphology of a Flowering Plant, and we will today talk about how can we represent a plant in the form of a floral diagram or a floral formula, right? So while representing a plant or a family of the particular plant, then what are the characteristics we need to we can say describe, or how in a very short form, how can we describe a family or a plant by using certain symbols. So while studying a plant, we keep a few things, we study, or we keep a few things in mind. Like for example, while we study a plant, we do keep in mind the habit of the plant, that is, what is the nature of a plant, right? So that means while we describe a plant, we need to start with the nature of the plant. So how can we describe the nature of the plant? That is, whether the plant is a herb, whether it is a shrub, or it is a tree, or any other peculiarity, as whether it is a climber, a parasite, saprophyte, etc. Whether it is a perennial flower or plant, or it is annual in nature, right? So these are the things we describe when we talk about especially the habit of a plant. Habit is basically the nature of the plant. There's a difference between habit and habitat. Habitat is the place where the plant is found, and habit, when we talk about habit is the nature of the plant, right? And I just now told you what do we mean by the nature. The next point is, while describing the plant, we do describe the type of root it possesses. That means whether the root is tap root or whether it is an adventitious root, right? So we need to tell that this particular plant is, for example, it is a tree and it has a tap root system, right? So that's about the root. The next characteristic feature, of course, now if there are certain modifications in the root, then we need to we need to describe the type of the modified root also, right? Similarly, if there is a modification in the stem, then we need to describe that modification as well, right? So the next thing is the stem. So again here, whether the stem is a herbaceous, whether it is herbaceous or woody stem, whether it is above the ground, that is aerial, or underground, or whether it is subaerial, whether it is weak, specialized, right, or any other condition like this. Then we also talk about the shape of the stem, whether the stem is cylindrical or whether it is angular, whether the stem is branched or it is unbranched, whether it is swollen at the nodes or it is jointed at the nodes. So that is how, and of course any kind of modifications, like we talked about the stem, you studied the stem tendril, right? They are twiners, etc. So we need to explain that also. Then again we come to the next characteristic, that is the leaf. So that means when we talk about the leaf, basically we need to explain the phyllotaxy, that is the arrangement of leaves on the stem, right? So whether the arrangement of the leaf is alternate, whether it is opposite, or whether it is whorled, right? So these are the three arrangements: alternate, opposite, and whorled arrangements, right? So any kind of these arrangements, then we need to explain whether the stipules are present or not, what is the shape of the lamina, whether the leaf is sessile or petiolate, then We explain, of course, the venation of the leaf is very, very important. So whether the venation is parallel or reticulate venation. Next we move on to the inflorescence, that is the arrangement of flowers on the stem is known as the inflorescence. So whether the flowers are solitary or found in clusters, right? Then there are different ways in which they are arranged, that is racemose, cymose, or if there is any special type of a floral arrangement, right? Now after that, when we talk about the floral diagram, or when we talk about the floral formula, right, that means the floral diagram and the floral formula. Again, we need to know about certain other things while explaining. That means how well in a floral diagram or with the help of a floral formula will we be able to explain all the characteristics of a flower, right? So then what are the things we need to keep in mind, right? So again now when we were talking about the floral diagram and the floral formula, we discussed that, okay, in the previous class we discussed about different terms, right? So now we talked about whether the bracts are present in the flower or whether they are absent, right? So we discussed what are the bracts. So if the bracts are present, then they are called bracteate. If the bract is absent, then they are known as ebracteate, right? And then there is a method of representing which we will do just now. Let us first understand this. Then whether the attachment of the flower is sessile, we discussed the term sessile, and whether it is pedicellate, attached with a pedicel, right? Either it is directly attached to the stem or it is attached with the help of a pedicel, right? So whether it is sessile or pedicellate. Then comes the presence of the floral whorls. If all the four whorls are present, then the flower is said to be complete. And if any one whorl is absent, then the floral whorl is incomplete, right? Then we came to the next term, feature that we studied was whether the flower is actinomorphic or zygomorphic, right? So again here, actinomorphic and zygomorphic, now how do we explain that, right? Actinomorphic, we show it like this, right? And it can be divided into two equal halves with the line passes through the central axis through any plane. It can be divided into two equal halves. So whether the line falls like this, whether it is like this or it is like this, in any plane if it is divided, it will be divided into two equal halves. So if this is there, if it is dividing like this, then the flower is said to be actinomorphic, right? Otherwise, if they are not dividing like this, then the symmetry of the flower is zygomorphic, right? Then the next is the presence of the reproductive part. So we talked about the flower being bisexual, that means having both the sexes, or it is unisexual, right? So if it is bisexual, that means the androecium as well as the gynoecium both are present. If it is unisexual, then in that case either the stamen is present or the carpel is present, right? Any one is present. So whether the stamen is present, it is called staminate, and if only the pistil is present, then it is called pistillate, right? Then comes the number of floral parts, right? So when we talked about the number of floral parts, so whether the petals or the sepals are only let's say petals and sepals, whether they are 2 in number, then they are dimeris. If they are 3 in number, then they are trimeris. If they are 4 in number, then they are tetrameris. If they are 5 in number, then they are pentameris, and so on, right? So that was about the floral parts. Then the position of the floral parts on the thalamus, we talked about 3 types. We talked about hypogynous, and in this we discussed that the ovary is superior, right? Then we talked about epigynous, in which we said the ovary is inferior. We talked about perigynous, which is half inferior, right? So we discussed these 3 about the flower. Then we talked about the arrangement of the floral parts, like how they are arranged, whether they are spirally arranged or cyclic in arrangement. Then of course the color is there, and if there is any other special feature, we do discuss that also. Coming to the calyx, we discussed that the calyx is also the sepal, right? Calyx and sepal is the same thing. They are generally green in color, right? And we discussed about its function, that it protects the flower during bud condition. That is what we discussed, right? Now coming to talking about the sepals, we discussed the degree of fusion, right? So that means whether they are free or whether they are fused, right? So that means either they are polysepalous or they are gamosepalous. Then we also talked about the various aestivations, right? So we talked about the valvate, twisted, imbricate, quincunxial and vexillary aestivation. And of course the colors, generally the calyx or the sepals are green in color, they are leaf-like, and at times if they are colored, then they are known as petaloid, right? Colored means they resemble the petals, petal-like, right? So then they are said to be petaloid. And of course if there is any other special feature present. Then comes the corolla. Again, the corolla are the petals that we are talking about. So whether the petals are fused or whether they are free, gamopetalous or polypetalous. Then what is the shape of the petals? Now this we didn't discuss in detail, but again when you will study the flowers in detail, we talk about the shape of the petals also. Of course then comes the aestivation, the color, and if there is any special feature present. Now we come to another term, that is the perianth. Now if the sepals and the petals are fused, they are indistinguishable. You cannot distinguish that which one is the petal and which one is the sepal. Then we use the term perianth for that, right? So perianth is the indistinguishable sepals and petals. So they are fused together. We cannot distinguish, we cannot differentiate the sepals from the petals. Then we use the term perianth, right? So then they are collectively termed as perianth, right? If they are indistinguishable, then they are collectively termed as the perianth. Now if the perianth is present, then the number of tepals, that means the fusion of the petals and the sepals together, petals, then the number of whorls and how many whorls are they arranged, so whether they are free or whether they are fused, and of course the kind of aestivation, right? So color, if they are sepaloid, if they are green, then they are sepaloid. If they are colored, then they are petaloid. So sepaloid and petaloid, and of course if there is any other feature present. Then comes the third whorl, that is the androecium, which is the male reproductive part, right? Also represented by the stamens. So whether they are fixed number or indefinite, and they are arranged in how many whorls? right? So number of stamens, whether they are fixed or they are indefinite stamens, and then if they are there, then in how many whorls are they arranged, right? So this we need to know. Then comes the whether the stamens are free. If they are free, they are known as polyandrous, right? And if fused, then if they are fused, then they are in how many bundles? If there is just a single bundle, right, then they are monodelphous. If it is arranged in two bundles, then they are diadelphous, right? Then if they are in many bundles, then they are polyadelphous. Sorry. So if they are in many, then they are polyadelphous. And then we talked about two other conditions, being syngenesious and synandrous, where the filaments are free and the anthers are fused, and when the filament as well as the anthers are all fused, right? We move on to the next characteristic of the stamen. Now, adhesion of the stamen. Now, if the stamen is attached to the petals, if the stamen is attached to the petals, then we use the word epipetalous, right? So when you are writing or explaining the floral diagram or the floral formula, when you write, then we will come across there are certain flowers which are epipetalous, right? So what does epipetalous means? That the stamen is fused to the petal, right? So when the stamen is fused to the petal, then it is known as epipetalous. Whereas if the base of the filament is attached to the tepals, then it is known as epiphyllous. That means if it is attached to the perianth, right? If the stamen is attached to the perianth, then it is known as epiphyllous, right? And what is the perianth? It is the fusion of calyx, the calyx and the corolla. Sepals and petals, when they are fused, they are called perianth, right? So what is epiphyllous? If the base of the filament of the stamen is fused to the perianth, then we use the term epiphyllous for that, right? Now you have to remember the two terms. Epipetalous is when the stamen is fused to the petal, and epiphyllous when the stamen is fused to the perianth, right? Then of course the length of the stamen, how is the anther attached? There are different ways in which the anther is attached that we have not done, so we won't go into the detail of that. Then the theca present, and if there is any other special feature present in the stamen. We move on to the next one, that is the gynoecium or the innermost whorl. Now you must remember that whenever we talk about the whorls, we always start from the outermost whorl, right? And then we move on to the innermost whorl. So even when we write the floral formula, or when we draw the floral diagram, we start from the outermost to the innermost. That means the outermost will be the calyx, which is also known as the sepal, right? Then comes the corolla, petal, then comes the androecium, which is the stamen, and innermost is the gynoecium, which is the pistil, right? And that is how we describe, and this is how we write the floral. In this sequence only we write the floral formulas also, right? So coming to the gynoecium, the number of carpels if it is single, monocarpellary if they are 2, then bicarpellary if they are 3, tri if they are 5, it is pentacarpellary if they are more than multicarpellary. Now cohesion, apocarpus if they are free and syncarpus if they are fused. We talked about this also in the previous class. Then the position of the ovary also we discussed. Superior ovary, inferior ovary and semi-inferior ovary, in which we talked about the flower being hypogynous, epigynous and perigynous, right? Then again we discussed about the locules. That means that I told you there are various chambers that are present in the flower, right? So if the chamber is only this chambers are also known as locules, right? So if the chamber is 1, then it is unilocular 1, bilocular is 2, trilocular is 3, tetra is 4 and multilocular is many, right? So number of ovules in each locule, how many ovules are there, then the placentation, etc. Then the type of the shape of the stigma also is discussed when we talk about the flower. Now we will see how is a flower represented by a diagram, which is also known as the floral diagram. So we will talk about the floral diagram. Now it says here, with so much variations in flower structure in various species of plant, we use the following 3 ways of recording floral structure. Drawing the half flower. Now this half flower we'll discuss later, how the flower is cut and then how it is represented. We come to the floral diagram. The number of parts of flower, their arrangement, aestivation, adhesion, cohesion, position with respect to the mother axis may be represented by a diagram known as the floral diagram. Now if you look at this diagram here, this dot is actually the mother axis. What is the mother axis? The mother axis is the position on the position on the stem to which the flower is attached. So here this would be the mother axis, and whenever we view the flower, it is viewed in this way, where the mother axis is said to be the posterior end and this part would be the anterior end, right? So it is viewed in this way, right? So here this is the mother axis, or the part on the stem to which the flower is attached, right? So it says here, it provides a ground plan of the flower as viewed from above and looks like a diagrammatic transverse section. Now if we look at the flower over here, the diagrammatic representation over here, we will see that these are the sepals, right? The inner to the sepals are the petals. Inner to the petals we see are the androecium, and right in the center is the gynoecium, right? And now if you look at the aestivation, here we see that petals and the sepals are arranged in such a way that their margins are touching each other. So we can say that this is showing valvate aestivation, right? And again here we can see how the androecium is attached to the petals, right? How the androecium is attached to the petals. So in this diagram itself, in this floral diagram itself, we are able to represent the whole structure. We can read about the flower. That means here we can tell how many stamens are present, how many locules are there in the ovary, how many petals are there, how many sepals are there, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sepals, 5 petals, how are they arranged, their estivation, whether the bracts are present or not, right? So this is how in the floral diagram we represent the whole flower. So when you will read further, you will see it's given here as, for example, in figure 2, the figure that we talked about just now. There are 5 sepals and 5 petals. They show cohesion, and 5 stamens show adhesion with the petals. Now if we look at this diagram here, we will see that how the stamens are showing, they are attached to the petals, right? So this is how a floral diagram is, a flower is represented in the form of a diagram, right? Then I told you the side of the flower nearest the axis is known as the posterior side, and the side away from the axis is the anterior side. That means again here in this flower we discuss, this is the floral diagram, here is the axis, so this is the posterior end, and here this is the anterior end of the diagram, right? We move on to the next figure, where again you can easily study about the floral parts. Now here if we look at the floral parts, you see this part is the sepal, right? And here you will see the sepal being represented, right? The outermost are the sepals, and this is how the sepal is being represented. Here these are the sepals, right? So these are the sepals or the calyx. Now we move to the next part, and the next part is the petal, right? Now look, here this is the petal, and if you look at the petals here, these are the petals, right? So the outermost are the sepals, which is shown here also being the outermost, here also in the floral diagram it is the outermost, right? Inner to the sepals are the petals, right? We can say the third whorl of the flower, outermost we can say is the first, right? So here you can see it is represented here, 1 2 3 4 5 petals, right? And 5 sepals, right? We move on to the next whorl, which is the stamen, right? So you look at it here, this is the stamen, and here this is the stamen, right? So stamen being represented here, right? And stamen is the inner whorl to that of the petals, right? We move to the innermost whorl, that is the gynoecium, and here you see the pistil, this is the innermost whorl that is represented, right? So this is very simply how you just have to learn how to represent the parts, and you will know how to arrange, right? And then of course this arrangement here shows the estivation. Now you can show how the sepals and petals are arranged, what is their estivation in this form. Again here we will just do another floral diagram. Again, now if you look at this floral diagram and you see these dotted lines, these lines over here, this is simply showing that the flower is actinomorphic, right? So how do we represent? This is actinomorphic. Now what is actinomorphic? Can be divided into 2 equal parts from any plane passing through the center, right? So the flower is actinomorphic. Then again you will see here, this is the mother axis, which I told you is the part on the stem to which the flower is attached, and this is the posterior end, and just the opposite end is the anterior side, right? Okay, we move to the next part. We see this outermost, this part, this is the bract. So that means it is a bracteate flower where the bract is present. We had discussed what is the bract in the, when we were talking in the previous class about the flower, when we studied about the flower, right? So that is the bract being present. Here you will see is the calyx, right? Is the calyx. Inner to the calyx is the corolla or the petals, right? Here you can see this is showing a twisted estivation, right? Then again, moving inner are the androecium, or we can say the male reproductive part being represented, and right in the center is the gynoecium, right? So that is how a floral diagram is flower is represented in a diagrammatic form. Now as you learn formulas in chemistry, in the same way we write floral formula for the plants. The word floral means for the plant. So there is a formula to represent the flower, right? So what does the floral formula tell us? It is a representation of the flower. By the whole formula of the flower, you will be able to know about the flower completely, right? Then it is represented by the use of numbers. There are certain numbers that are used, then there are certain letters, alphabets that are used, then there are certain symbols that are used for representation. That means the complete floral formula is made up of numbers, it is made up of letters, and it is made up of symbols, right? Then the third thing is it provides information about the parts of a flower. Now if you remember just now initially in the beginning of the lesson, we talked about the parts of the flower. We talked about the bracts being present, then we talked about the sepals, petals, what are the conditions, whether they are fused, whether they are free, right? And whether whether the stamens are fused with the petals or they are fused with the perianth, etc. So all the parts of the flower are represented in that whole formula, and of course the arrangement is also given over there, and what is the relation with one another. Now like I told you, if the stamen is fused with the petal, right, so what is this relationship is also shown in the floral diagram, right? Now the floral formula. Now to write the floral formula, there are certain symbols that are used, right? And you need to learn those symbols nicely so that easily you will be able to write the floral diagram, right? Write the floral formula. Now there is a sequence in which the floral diagram is written. We do need to tell about the presence of the bracts, right? Then after you explain about the bracts, you need to tell about the symmetry, actinomorphic or zygomorphic, and then we start with the outermost whorls of the flower, starting with the calyx, corolla, androecium and gynoecium. This is the sequence that has to be followed, right? There is a way of writing the formula, the floral formula, and there is a sequence in which the floral formula is written, and this sequence needs to be followed. Okay, let's come to the symbols, right? Now if the bract is present, which we call as the bracteate condition, that is represented by BR, right? Now if the bract is absent, then it is known as ebracteate, and it is represented by capital E, small b and R, right? If it is bracteolate, then BRL, right? If epicalyx is present, then this. Generally, just now when you will study the floral formulas, then this epicalyx will not be used. Now if a particular whorl is absent, then we put a 0, right? For example, now if we talk about, let's say, calyx, right? Calyx, if you look at it here, is represented by the alphabet K, right? It starts with Calyx is calyx, but it is represented by the symbol K, and calyx are the sepals. Now if the calyx, for example, is not present, then we put a 0, right? So that is how it is used if a particular word is not present. Now if there are indefinite number of floral parts, cannot be counted, then it is represented as like this. This means indefinite number, not countable, right? Then of course, after you explain this bracteate form, then we come to the symmetry. So if it is a regular symmetry, that means if the flower is actinomorphic, that means it can be divided into two halves by passing a line through any plane through the axis, then it is called a regular or a actinomorphic, and actinomorphic flower is represented by a circle and a cross in the center, right? So this is actinomorphic. Now if the flower is zygomorphic means irregular, and it cannot be divided into two equal halves through any different plane, only in one particular plane it can be divided only, then it is represented by a symbol like this, which is like a somewhat like a percentage symbol, right? Then I told you that calyx or the sepals outermost are represented by the alphabet K, right? Then comes the corolla or the petals. Okay, that is a capital K. The petals are represented by capital C, corolla. Then if the petal and the sepal are fused, then that is known as perianth or the tepal, and perianth is represented by a capital P, right? Androecium or the presence of stamen is capital A, gynoecium is capital G, right? Now coming to the sexes, if it is unisexual or it is in that case unisexual, we can say if only let's say the stamen is present, it is a staminate flower, it is represented by a symbol like this, a circle with an arrow above. That means it is the male part of the flower, right? Staminate. Now if it is unisexual and only the pistil is present or the female part is present, then we represent it with a circle and a cross below, right? So that this is the symbol for a pistillate flower, presence of only the female reproductive part. Now if the flower is bisexual, that means both the reproductive organs are present, then we represent it with a circle, an arrow on top and a cross at the bottom, right? So this represents a bisexual flower, right? Then we come to the cohesion part. Now if any part is fused, right? For example, if there are sepals which are represented by K, the sepals are 5 in number and the sepals are fused, then we put it in the bracket. Now this bracket shows that the petals are fused, right? Then comes epiphyllus. I told you if the androecium is attached to the perianth, right? We discussed what is the perianth, right? This fusion is the perianth. Now if the androecium is attached to the perianth, of course the perianth will be explained first. When you write the floral diagram, perianth will come first, that is the sequence. Then we write P, A, and we put an arc over it, right, joining A to P. Now this arc represents that the androecium is attached to the perianth. So then in that case, that is epiphyllous stamen. Epiphyllous stamen means that the androecium is attached to the perianth. That means, of course, the filament of the androecium is attached to the perianth, right? Next we come to the epipetalous stamen. Epipetalous means when the androecium is attached to the petals. Petals or the corolla are represented by the alphabet C, right? Of course, when you write the sequence, in the sequence when you write the formula, floral formula, the corolla will come first, because corolla is the whorl that is outer to the androecium. So corolla, and after corolla comes the androecium, right? Now if the androecium is showing an epipetalous condition, that means if the androecium is fused to the petal, then we represent it with an arc above, right, joining A to C. Now this condition shows that the stamen is epipetalous, right, epipetalous. All right. Then we talked about hypogynous flowers, perigynous and epigynous flowers, right? So hypogyny means superior ovary, right? How is the ovary represented? Or the when ovary is the inner, the gynoecium. Gynoecium consists of the ovary, right? So that is the innermost whorl of the flower, and gynoecium we said is represented by G. Now if, of course, the ovary is present inside the gynoecium, right? Now if the ovary is superior ovary, that means all the other parts of the floral whorl arises from below the ovary, right? Then in that case the ovary is superior or hypogynous condition of the flower. Then we represent the gynoecium with a line below, or a bar below the alphabet. Now this bar below the alphabet represents the ovary superior, right? Now if it is an inferior ovary, right, that means inferior ovary, that means all the floral whorls are arising from above the ovary, right? So that is, these are the petals, then the stamens, right? If all that is arising above the ovary, then in this case this is the epigynous condition where the ovary is inferior. Now if the ovary is inferior, it is represented by gynoecium G with a bar above. The bar above shows that the ovary is below. So this is an inferior ovary, right? Then we come to the next, that is perigynous, half inferior. In this case we represent the gynoecium as G with a dash on the side, right? All right. Now again, related to the gynoecium, there are many things, right? First of all, how do we represent the gynoecium? That is with the alphabet G, right? Then after that we said whether the ovary is superior, so G with this, right? Now if the ovary is bicarpellary, syncarpous, bicarpellary to syncarpous fused, then with a bracket, 2 inside the bracket, right? Now if this ovary is of course superior, then of course we represent with a bar below, right? Then bicarpellary free carpels, right? So if the carpels are not fused, then in that case gynoecium and only 2 without the bracket, that means the carpels are free. If the carpels are fused, we represent it like this. If the ovary is superior, we represent it like this. If the ovary is inferior, we represent it like this, right? And we come to the last one, that is the calyx. It's the presence of 2 whorls of calyx, each of 2 sepals, like in Brassica and Cruciferae. It is represented in this form, right? So with this you studied the symbols used in the construction of the floral formula. And just one example that we will talk about now, right? Now this is the floral formula of a flower. Let's read the floral formula. ebracteate. That means the bracts are absent. Ebracteate. This sign, it is actinomorphic. What do you understand by actinomorphic? That the flower can be divided into equal halves through any plane, right? This shows that the flower is bisexual. Both the sexual organs are present. It has the androecium as well as the gynoecium, right? Then we come to the calyx, right? The calyx is represented by a capital K, and this is showing that there are 5 sepals present, and these 5 sepals are fused. If you see, it's shown in a bracket, right? The number 5 is bracketed. That means the sepals are fused. We come to the corolla or the petals, right? Again, the petals are 5 in number, and the petals are also fused because that is also shown in the bracket. Inner to the petals are the androecium, which are also 5 in number, and they are also fused. Also we see that the androecium is attached to the petal, right? Now if the androecium is attached to the petal, what kind of a condition is this? The androecium or the stamen is epipetalous, right? Epipetalous. What does epipetalous mean? It means that the androecium is attached to the corolla or the petals, and we represent it with an arc joining A and C. And last we come to is the gynoecium or the innermost wall, represented by the alphabet G. Then we see that it is bicarpellary. That means it is represented by G, bicarpellary. We also see that the carpels are fused, and it shows a superior ovary, right? So with this simple floral formula, you will be able to explain the whole flower. Even now, when you learn how to write the formula, the floral formula, and when you get to read a floral formula by just looking at the reading the floral formula, you will be able to explain about the flower to any person who may ask you, right? So that's all about today, and in the next class, children, we were in detail. Now since we've studied all the symbols and everything, how to write the floral formula, how to make the floral diagram, we will go into the detail, and we will talk about family Solanaceae and Liliaceae, because that's there in your syllabus, and Fabiaceae has been removed from your syllabus for this session, right? So that's all about today. Please complete your assignments that I give you. Okay, so that's all about today. Thank you.